Welcome to the Microchip Is podcast. Join your host, Mike Maynard, as he learns about the technologies, products, and people that make microchip technology what it is today.
Welcome to the Microchip Is podcast. I'm talking to different people from Microchip to learn what Microchip does in a wide range of industries. And today my guest is Steve Kennelly. Steve is the Associate Director of Medical Products at Microchip. Welcome to the podcast, Steve.
Thanks, Mike. Good to be here.
It's great to have you on. I mean, to start off with, can you just give me a little bit of background about your role at Microchip?
I lead the medical products group at Microchip, and we are a vertical market organization. So we're in charge of making Microchip accessible to the medical market and making sure that all of our medical customers know how to use our parts and what we've got available.
That sounds great. And, can you give me a bit of background as to the kind of medical products that use Microchip?
Yeah, the short answer is all kinds. We've got something like 1,000 customers that are pure play in medical products. If you look at a list of the top 10 medical device manufacturers, you'll be looking at a list of our customers. We are used in devices that are classified by FDA or other regulatory organizations as class 1, 2, and 3. So everything from non-contact thermometers to implantable devices for cardiac rhythm management.
That's interesting you mentioned the different classes. I'm sure there's people listening who aren't in the medical field at the moment. Could you just briefly unpack what the three classes mean?
Sure. So in most countries, if you're going to sell a medical device, it needs to meet certain requirements that are set by a body in that country. And in order to kind of streamline that process, they divide it into multiple groups based on the risk. So a class 1 device would be something that if it goes completely wrong, there's no risk of injuring somebody. A class 2 is in between, and a class 3 is the highest level. So something like a device that delivers radiation therapy would be an example of a case where if that device malfunctions even slightly, there's a very good chance that somebody's going to be injured.
Wow, so that really is the complete range of medical products then.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's not something that everybody is comfortable with. But like I said, we've got customers that are using us in all three of those classes. We're in a lot of implantable devices.
So it's really cool. You said something earlier that maybe is also worth unpacking as well. I mean, you said that you're a vertical marketing group. So can you explain in Microchip what that means and how that's different from being a business unit?
Yep, absolutely. In fact, since you mentioned business units, Microchip has a lot of them. We make everything from discrete diodes to microcontrollers and FPGAs. And in a few cases, some of our business units actually make devices that were designed for particular medical applications. Most of the time, they're not. So my team looks at the product pipelines and the introductions from all the different business units. We look for new products that are coming out that will fit into a niche that we've identified as supporting a trend in the medical field. So if there's something new in drug delivery that we're following or imaging that we're following, and then one of our business units comes out with a product that we think fits a particular square on a block diagram, we'll engage with that BU and put together some information in order to reach out to people who are trying to solve that particular problem. At the same time, when we're talking with customers, when we're talking with our field representatives who are engaged with our clients, when they identify to us a need that they've got or a particular problem that they're stuck on, we bring that back to the appropriate business unit and they can roll that into their product planning and their pipelines and see if there's an opportunity to include that in their future product offerings.
That sounds really cool, that two-way approach. I mean, do you have any examples of some of the products you've either seen a business unit launch that has a good medical application, or alternatively, perhaps it contrasts that with a problem you've seen in the medical market where you've worked with a BU to develop a solution?
Sure. On the latter, one of the key ones was this is a few years ago now, and actually before COVID. And I mentioned that because there's kind of a connection. We have a number of customers that made respiratory products, cases where you have to move air. So you think CPAP, you think ventilators, you think some drug delivery devices. The thing that they were stuck on was motor control and being able to spin a brushless DC motor at a very high speed with very tight control. And that was something that one of our microcontroller business units was considering, but they weren't quite over the edge on committing to designing a part for it. So we were able to show them a business case on where a motor control device could be used. And they put that onto their roadmap and wound up bringing out a part specifically for that. And just to maybe contrast that, another case that I like to use as an example because it's kind of personal to me, the first product business plan that I wrote when I was actually working in Microchip's automotive group was for a microcontroller that we were targeting specifically for airbag sensor monitoring. So it would tell when you were in a significant enough crash to trigger the airbag. And we made that part exactly what was required for connecting to the sensor and communicating back to a central module. A few years later, there was a company that put that same part into a temperature sensor that was adhered to the back of a woman's arm and measured her temperature every few seconds in order to predict ovulation, for couples that were trying to get pregnant. So the part that we thought was perfect for an airbag turned out to be perfect for a completely different application. And it's not unusual that we see that kind of surprise synergy in our products.
I love those two applications, and really interesting to see that a part designed for an airbag can actually have a great medical use as well. So that's really cool to see. You said, in terms of marketing, what you're doing is really helping getting the products in front of customers in the medical sector. So how do you do that? Is that documentation, or are you producing, proof of concepts? Can you just explain a little bit about what the medical team do?
Sure. And it's actually all of the above. The number one is information that we put on the web. And we want to make it as easy as possible for anybody to find out what we've got and how to use it. So there is a dedicated subsite on the microchip.com website, microchip.com/medical. And that's where we kind of concentrate all of the information that we've got that is specific to the medical market. So what we put on there is not just links to the business units for some particular applications, but we also go to the point of doing proof of concepts and in some cases, actual reference designs that we allow you to download the design files. So you can download source code, schematics, even Gerber files in some cases, and you can build a board and incorporate that into your design. And we've done that for a number of different applications over the years.
I love that. That's really providing that complete support to help people pretty much turnkey produce something that you've got as a proof of concept. That's fantastic.
Yep, exactly.
In terms of what the customers, the designers in the medical sector are seeing, I mean, what do you think are some of the main challenges that are facing engineers working in medical that you can help with microchip products?
Well, anything that's not plugged into a wall, and there's a growing space in portable devices, wearable devices, where low power is really the most important thing. And that has always been kind of one of the hallmarks of Microchip. Pretty much every one of our product lines, if they're not ground up aimed at low power, has a low power subsegment. Another thing that's coming in through not just medical, but really everywhere is security. Being able to authenticate communication, especially wirelessly, between two different units that, comprise a device. Knowing who you're talking to and making sure that information cannot be read by an unauthorized source. So we've got lots of different ways to do that, from dedicated chips that you can add onto a system for a root of trust kind of a function, to microcontrollers and MCUs that have that feature built into them. And then another thing is in like user interfaces. When devices are used in, let's just say, a hospital room or an operating room, one of the things that designers are really concerned about is the load for the person who has to use it. And having a clean user interface that kind of minimizes the amount that they have to work to use it is extremely important. We see touch controls, touch and gesture controls, both buttons and touch screens, sliders, those kind of things are becoming part of the user interfaces of everything from tilting a hospital bed to operating an ultrasound device. So the user interface side is a real important part of that too.
That's fascinating. And I know, for example, we talked with Xavier about security in this podcast series, and he also mentions medical as being a key market. So it's great you two guys are working together. I'm interested. You've talked about a wide range of applications, but what do you think are some of the more interesting applications that you're working with now that perhaps would excite people to hear about, how Microchip's helping to enable them?
So we can kind of look at that in a number of different categories. And when you say interesting, I hear where we're seeing a lot of expansion and a lot of new companies getting into. So one of those is in all kinds of diagnostics. And diagnostics can be a device that does, let's say, blood testing. So you're looking for a particular characteristic in blood in a large desktop kind of a machine. It can also mean a pulse oximeter that somebody uses to check their oxygen level at home every day. And there's kind of two main segments in drug delivery. One is you're in a hospital room, you've got an infusion pump connected to you, and it's administering either a continuing dosage or you've got an on demand dosage that can be done either by you or by a caregiver. And the other one is for home use. There are auto injectors that make it very easy for a layperson to give themselves an injection, or a nebulizer that can vaporize medicine and let you inhale it, or even just a pill dispenser. So, drug delivery is another very important space. And then one of those areas where Microchip actually has devices that we've aimed specifically at a market is in the area of imaging, ultrasound imaging. So we've got devices that do the high voltage drive to both generate and receive the signals that go into the tissue to generate an ultrasound image. So imaging, diagnostics, drug delivery, and all kinds of home use applications are probably the ones that we're seeing the most interest in right now.
That's fascinating. I mean, one of the things everybody's talking about now is AI. Presumably, if you're heavily into the imaging side of medical, AI is also an important technology that you're helping customers make use of.
Yeah, absolutely. AI has a couple of aspects to it. I think everybody's familiar with ChatGPT, where you've got like a generalized AI. And I think where we're going to see most of the application in the medical space is not really closely related to that. It's going to be a lot more specific. So when you look at the output from an imaging system, be it an ultrasound or an MRI or whatever, being able to quickly screen those and identify areas where a radiologist has to spend a little bit more time and make a more informed call. I think we're going to see AI really stepping into that. I think we're also going to see a lot more edge or extreme edge kind of AI applications where somebody checking their temperature or their lung capacity or some other vital sign on a regular basis and being able to predict, for example, when an asthma attack may be coming on even several days in advance. And AI, I think, is going to really enable that kind of application to catch on without requiring a person to look at a huge amount of data in order to get that.
I love that. It's great to hear that, AI is having these really practical applications in the medical market. We've talked a lot about, a range of applications and how you help the medical market. I'm just interested, because you're not a business unit, how do you fit in with Microchip overall? You mentioned Microchip has got a lot of business units. Are you working with most of them?
We're actually we're working with almost all of them. Of the 30 some business units that we've got, I think there are two that we don't deal with, and they're extremely specialized towards other particular verticals. But one of the things that we're looking at really is with tying them together into a total system that solves some problem. All of our business units obviously have got very highly optimized expertise in what they're doing. They're experts in the particular devices that they make, but they're not necessarily experts in all the ways that those things could be used, especially in cases where it's something that they don't expect, like the airbag going to a temperature sensor. So even though the business units are experts in their particular field, sometimes they need a little help in finding additional applications where their products can be used. And that's what my guys can help them do because of the visibility that they've got to where the trends are specifically in medical. And being able to have access to that early information from the BUs also lets us bring things to customers earlier. They typically have a bit longer design cycle. So if they can engage earlier with us, everybody can get products to market faster.
I love that. That's great. The way you're working almost across the whole business. One of the things we're asking, the experts at Microchip we talk to is about engineering advice. Microchip's famous for the support. So I'm interested, Steve, what's the best engineering advice you can give the listeners? Maybe something around designing for medical applications.
First of all, hopefully you're working with Microchip, but whoever it is, whatever supplier you're working with, especially on critical components, engage with them early and engage with them deeply. The company that makes the chips that are going to be going into your device are truly experts at it. We've got quite a lot of support that we can provide that we don't always get asked for. The big names in the medical device industry, the ones that people would recognize, are very, very good at this. We've got pretty deep engagements with them, with the people from our BUs and from my team and our field people, helping them at every stage of the design and making sure that they're, one, selecting the best product, and two, using it in the best way in order to solve the particular problem that they've got.
That's great advice. And, I'm sure listeners will want to take advantage of the support that's available. We've covered an awful lot. I really appreciate your time here, but is there one thing that you'd like listeners to take away from the podcast and remember about Microchip in the medical market?
Yeah, first of all, we've got a lot of products. We've got many, many BUs making a huge range of products. Some of them were designed especially to go into medical devices. Most of them weren't, but they all can be used in medical devices. And in fact, most of them are currently being used in medical devices. So I would just encourage everybody to look at the entire line that we've got and know that we are happy for you to use us in class 1, 2, and 3 medical devices.
Fantastic. That's really positive. Thank you, Steve. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been fascinating to hear about what Microchip is in the medical market. If listeners, would like some more information or perhaps have some questions, what would be the best way to get into contact?
Probably the very best way would be through our local field contacts. So there are Microchip sales offices all over the world. You can reach out to one of them and they can put you in touch with the appropriate person, including me. People can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if they want to get in touch with me personally.
That's very generous. Steve, I've really enjoyed it. It's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Microchip Is podcast. Please follow us on your favorite podcast platform to keep learning about the many technologies, products, and people that make Microchip what it is today. Look out for our upcoming Microchip Is podcasts and our new Beyond the Microchip podcast series.